A routine traffic stop turns into a nightmare for one woman. But when the truth comes out, everything changes. A black woman is stopped by a racist cop on horseback, the tension rising in an instant. But just as the situation escalates, the unthinkable happens, and it turns the tables in a way no one could predict. Before we continue, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. Hit like and subscribe for more powerful stories that will leave you speechless. The hot Texas sun glared down on the blacktop as Simone Jefferson drove her cherry-red BMW through the quiet suburban neighborhood. The air was thick with humidity, and the hum of cicadas filled the background like a warning. It was just supposed to be a quick detour from the main road, a shortcut home. But nothing about today was going to be quick or quiet. Simone, a sharp and composed black woman in her late 30s, was dressed in a white blouse and fitted slacks. Her curly hair was tied in a bun, and her badge was tucked inside her purse, away from curious eyes. She was an FBI agent, but off duty. Today, she just wanted to get home after a long meeting downtown. She pulled up to a four-way stop, glanced both ways, and was about to press the gas when a loud snort startled her. Out of nowhere, a police horse trotted up beside her vehicle. The officer on it was a tall, broad-chested man with pale skin, a trimmed mustache, and cold eyes that scanned her with disdain. His name tag read Briggs, license and registration. He barked without greeting. Simone blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said license and registration." "Now," he repeated, tugging the reins to bring the horse closer. Its hoof scraped the pavement beside her window. Simone hesitated. "Did I break a law, officer?" "You're in a restricted zone. Didn't you see the sign?" Briggs snapped. Simone looked around. No visible signage. No warning. Just a quiet street and two parked patrol cars in the distance. She sighed inwardly and reached for her purse. Briggs leaned down, his face almost pressed to her window. "Move slowly." "I don't like sudden moves." Simone forced a calm smile. "I understand." She handed over her ID and registration, keeping her FBI badge tucked in the flap, not wanting to flash it unless necessary. Briggs snatched the papers and stepped back, inspecting them while muttering under his breath. Behind her, the neigh of another horse rang out. Simone turned her rearview mirror slightly. Another officer on horseback was approaching, a younger cop with a smug grin on his face. The first officer waved him over. "We got ourselves a slick one here, Jameson." "Briggs thinks she can cruise through restricted streets in a sports car like she owns the place." Jameson chuckled. "Figures." Simone rolled her window down a little more. "Officers, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I didn't see any signs. I was just trying to quiet." Briggs barked, cutting her off. Simone's hands curled around the steering wheel. Her patience thinned, but she remained composed. Briggs walked the horse in front of her car, blocking the road. Jameson circled to the other side, peering in through the passenger window. "Step out of the vehicle," Briggs commanded. "May I ask why?" Simone replied, still calm. "I said out," he roared. She unbuckled her seatbelt and opened the door cautiously, stepping out with her palms raised slightly, the way she'd taught dozens of agents to do in high-pressure training. Her heart beat faster, but her voice stayed even. Briggs dismounted in one sharp move and stepped forward, standing just inches from her. "You got a lot of nerve," he sneered. "Driving through this neighborhood like you belong here." "I live 15 minutes from here," she replied, "and I have done nothing wrong." "Shut up," Jameson said, walking up beside them. "You people always think the law doesn't apply to you." Simone's jaw tightened. Her instincts screamed to reveal her identity, to reach for her badge, to shut this all down. But she knew better. Not. She needed them to cross the line. She needed witnesses. A small crowd had started to gather across the street, neighbors peeking from their porches, phones in hand, recording silently. Briggs shoved Simone lightly in the shoulder. "Let's see if you run that mouth when you're on the ground." "Don't touch me," Simone said, her tone sharpening now. "You threatening an officer?" Jameson asked, stepping in close. Simone didn't flinch. "No, I'm asserting my rights." Briggs growled and turned to Jameson. "You got the reins? Hold the horse. I'm gonna teach her what respect looks like." The crowd murmured. A phone clicked. Somewhere a woman's voice said, "Oh my God, is he serious?" As Briggs took another step forward, Simone finally reached into her pocket and pulled out her badge, holding it up. "Simone Jefferson, FBI." Jameson froze. Briggs didn't. He slapped the badge out of her hand. "You think that scares me?" he hissed. Suddenly the horse whinnied and stomped, reacting to Briggs's aggressive energy. Simone took a step back. The scene escalated in seconds. Briggs grabbed Simone by the arm. Simone didn't resist, but he twisted her wrist anyway, trying to pin her. The crowd shouted. Cameras zoomed in. "You're making a mistake," Simone gritted out, her voice still firm. "You already made yours," Briggs growled. Suddenly a new voice rang out. "Briggs, stand down." A sergeant ran up from one of the patrol cars. Red-faced and panting, he pushed between them. "What the hell are you doing?" he snapped. She was uncooperative. "She's FBI," the sergeant barked. "And you're assaulting a federal agent." Briggs stepped back, breath heavy, face twisting with confusion. Jameson paled. Simone massaged her wrist, her eyes still locked on Briggs. The sergeant turned to her. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. We'll handle this immediately." Simone said nothing. She just stared, calm but deadly silent. In the distance, the whir of black SUVs began to approach. Simone didn't call for backup, but someone did. And what was coming would shake this small town to its core. The police officer who had tried to forcefully remove Simone from her vehicle had retreated into the distance, his face twisted with confusion and anger. But his exit did little to quell the tension that hung in the air. The crowd had started to disperse, their murmurs replaced by hushed whispers of disbelief. Simone stayed still in her wheelchair, watching the approaching black SUVs in the distance. The steady hum of their engines broke the uneasy silence, and her heart, which had been racing, began to slow. Her hand moved to the side of her chair, fingers lightly touching the holster where her gun would normally rest. But today, she was off duty, and the firearm was not with her. "Are you all right?" the sergeant asked gently, his voice quieter now. Simone didn't answer immediately. Instead, she focused on the advancing vehicles, calculating the situation in her mind. This wasn't just about one officer's overreaction. It had been a perfect storm of racism, authority, and misplaced power. And now the cavalry was coming. But the question was, who were they for? The SUVs pulled up sharply, and several well-dressed federal agents stepped out, their faces serious and trained. At the front of the pack, a woman with short blonde hair and an air of undeniable authority approached Simone. "Agent Anderson, U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation," the woman said as she held out her hand. "Are you all right, ma'am?" Simone looked at her, blinking slowly before shaking the woman's hand firmly. "I'm fine, but I think you should be talking to your officer." Agent Anderson glanced at the uniformed officers standing by. "What happened here exactly?" Simone took a deep breath. "Those officers initiated a traffic stop on me. I'm black, and in a wheelchair. I had no idea what was going on until they started shouting at me. One of them, Officer Briggs, got physical, even after I showed him my ID. And the other officers?" Anderson asked. "The second officer, Davis, just stood there, watching. The one in charge was Briggs. They were going to escalate the situation." "I see," Agent Anderson said, frowning. "You're FBI?" Simone nodded. "I'm Agent Simone Jefferson. But I wasn't on duty today. I didn't think it was necessary to flash my badge. I wanted to see how they handled it." The agents behind Anderson exchanged looks, their faces darkening at the thought of the officer's behavior. Simone could tell that they were familiar with cases like hers, incidents where authority figures abused their power, especially against black citizens. The officers who had been involved were now grouped together, whispering among themselves. Officer Briggs stood with his head bowed, looking like he was trying to come up with an excuse for his actions. Agent Anderson glanced over at the officers, her expression hardening. "You're all lucky I'm here," she muttered, then turned back to Simone. "We'll be investigating this. I can't promise you that it's going to be easy, but we will get answers." Before Simone could respond, a phone call cut through the tension. Agent Anderson answered it quickly, holding up a hand as if to signal Simone to wait. The conversation was short but intense. Simone's eyes shifted toward the officers, her instincts telling her that there was more to this situation than she could see. When Agent Anderson ended the call, she looked at Simone with a somber expression. "I need you to follow me, Agent Jefferson," she said, her tone now filled with urgency. "There's something else we need to discuss." Simone felt a knot form in her stomach, but she said nothing as she wheeled herself forward. The crowd had dissipated now, leaving the police station almost eerily quiet. The agents led her into a nearby conference room, where several more government officials and FBI agents were waiting. Their faces were serious, their expressions grim. The door closed behind them, and Simone immediately felt the change in the air, the weight of the situation settling in. "Take a seat, Agent Jefferson," Agent Anderson said, motioning to the chair. As soon as Simone was seated, Agent Anderson placed a folder in front of her. "Simone, what you just experienced was no accident," Anderson began. "It was intentional. Briggs and his partner Davis have a record, not just with this department, but with several local agencies, and there's a pattern of discrimination, especially against black civilians." Simone frowned. "What are you telling me?" Anderson slid the folder toward Simone. "We've been investigating this for some time now. There are whispers in the department. Some of the top brass are complicit. Briggs and his partner, along with a few others, have been targeting people based on their race, their backgrounds, and even their disabilities." Simone's breath caught in her throat. "Are you telling me that they've been?" "Yes," Anderson replied, "and it's not just here. It's spread to other counties. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But now, we have a chance to shut this down." Simone's heart raced. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. It was one thing to experience a random act of racism, but this was organized, and it wasn't just happening locally. The influence reached far and wide. "I've been working undercover to expose these officers, but I needed a trigger. I needed something to get the ball rolling," Anderson continued. "You just became that trigger, whether you intended to or not." Simone stared down at the folder in front of her, her mind whirling. She never thought that the attack on her would open a door into a network of corruption this deep. "I need you to help us, Agent Jefferson," Anderson said. "This isn't just about you anymore. This is about exposing the entire operation." Simone felt the weight of the decision fall upon her shoulders. Was she ready to take on this fight? Could she take down an entire system of officers who were in the business of harassing innocent people? Her jaw tightened. "You have my help," she said firmly. "But don't think it's going to be easy." Anderson smiled faintly, acknowledging Simone's courage. "We never said it would be." The investigation had already begun. It was no longer just about the confrontation with Simone, but about the larger, dangerous web of corruption that had been silently spreading throughout the department. The police officers involved in her assault were only one piece of a much more intricate puzzle. Agent Anderson and her team had started looking into the internal records of the Shreveport Police Department. What they uncovered was far worse than they had anticipated. There was evidence of racially motivated targeting, unethical practices, and even illegal surveillance of black citizens in the area. Simone's incident had been the breaking point, but it was just the beginning of a much larger operation. Simone, still reeling from the confrontation, couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change forever. She had signed up for the fight, but even she didn't realize just how deep the rabbit hole went. Simone's apartment. Simone sat by the window in her modest apartment, the sounds of the city filling the air. She had always found a strange peace in the noise, the hum of life continuing around her, no matter what chaos may have occurred. But today, the static of her thoughts was louder than anything outside. She hadn't heard from her father, James Jefferson, yet. Her mother had called asking if she was okay, and her friends had texted offering their support. But James, the man who had raised her with fierce love, the one who had stood beside her every step of the way, was hard to reach. He had always been a protector, but even he couldn't have prepared for this. As an FBI agent, Simone knew how to keep her emotions in check. But this was different. She wasn't investigating a case, she was living it. She wasn't a by-the-book agent anymore. She was part of the story, and that made everything far more complicated. Her phone buzzed. It was Agent Anderson, the message simple but clear. "We need you at the precinct. Things are moving faster than we expected." Simone wheeled herself into the Shreveport Police Headquarters with Agent Anderson by her side. The building felt hostile, as though the very walls had been stained by years of corruption. It was a familiar feeling, one that had followed her throughout her career. Justice never came easy, and it always came with a price. The officers who had been involved in the incident were already separated from the others. Officer Briggs, the one who had physically attacked her, was now under intense scrutiny. He had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation, but even that felt like a mere formality. The true battle lay in taking down the entire operation. "This isn't going to be easy," Anderson said quietly. eyeing the conference room ahead. We're up against powerful people in this town. But we have something they don't. The truth. Simone nodded, the weight of those words settling deep in her chest. Truth was a powerful weapon. But it had consequences. She had already seen what happened when truth was ignored. Her body shuddered at the thought. They entered the conference room, where several other agents were already seated. On the table lay a stack of files, records, notes, and photos from the investigation. Simone felt her pulse quicken as she approached the table. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The moment when everything shifted. "This is everything we've got so far," Anderson said, flipping open the top file. "The officers we've focused on, Briggs, Davis, and several others, have been operating in a network. We have evidence of collusion. Evidence of targeting black individuals and people with disabilities. These aren't isolated incidents. This has been going on for months." Simone's heart raced. "How far does it go?" Anderson's gaze flickered to the other agent. They had all been working tirelessly, chasing down leads, gathering intel. But no one had expected this level of corruption. The investigation was more than just about Briggs and his partner now. It was about a network of officers across multiple jurisdictions, connected through underground channels. "It goes high," Anderson said bluntly. "We're looking at more than just these officers. There are figures in the local government involved. Politicians who have been covering up these activities for years." Simone took a deep breath. She could feel the weight of this, the enormity of it. Her job wasn't just to find the truth. It was to bring down the system that allowed this to happen. Inside Shreveport Police Headquarters, 9:00 a.m. As Simone and Anderson prepared to move on the next phase of the operation, an unexpected visitor arrived. Officer Davis, the second officer who had been involved in her confrontation, walked into the room. His posture was stiff, his face pale. He seemed like a man who had lost his confidence, his mind frayed from the weight of the investigation. "I need to speak with you," Davis said to Simone, his voice quiet but desperate. Simone raised an eyebrow, meeting his gaze. There was no hiding the shame in his eyes. "Speak," Simone said firmly, her voice cold. I didn't know it would go this far," Davis stammered. "I never thought things would escalate like that. But I'm not the one in charge here. Briggs. He's the one who pushed it. He's been involved in things I didn't know about." Simone's eyes narrowed. "Things like what?" Davis took a shaky breath. "I was just following orders." "Okay. But I knew something was wrong. I was just too scared to speak up." He paused, his voice barely audible. "I'm willing to help you take down the others. I want out." Simone studied him for a long moment, trying to read him. The shame in his eyes seemed genuine. But that didn't mean she could trust him. "We'll be watching you," Simone said, her voice hard. "If you want to help, start by telling us everything you know." Davis nodded, visibly relieved but still clearly shaken. "I'll cooperate. I don't want to be part of this anymore." Simone turned to Agent Anderson. "We'll need to keep him under observation. If he's telling the truth, he's our inside man." Anderson nodded, but her face remained hard. "This isn't over, not by a long shot. But at least now we have someone on the inside." The investigation was in full swing. Agent Simone Jefferson, now firmly entrenched in the case, felt the weight of her responsibility bearing down on her. What had started as a routine traffic stop had escalated into a complex operation to dismantle a deeply rooted system of corruption within the police department. And now, the stakes were higher than ever. The news of the ongoing investigation had spread like wildfire. Protests erupted in the streets, calling for justice for Simone, for the black community, and for the victims who had been targeted by officers like Briggs and Davis. The city of Shreveport was divided. Some demanded accountability while others clung to the narrative of law and order. The pressure was mounting on all sides, and no one knew how this was going to end. Simone stood outside the conference room, her gaze fixed on the view of the police station parking lot. She could see the officers, some of whom were wary, others still riding high on their position of power, oblivious to the storm that was coming. "Simone," Agent Anderson's voice interrupted her thoughts. Simone turned to face her. Anderson's eyes were steely, her posture rigid with purpose. "We've got a lead on Briggs. He's making contact with someone higher up the chain, someone in the local government. It's time we turn up the heat." Simone nodded, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on her. Where do we start? Anderson's face darkened. We start by taking down the higher-ups. Briggs and Davis are just pawns. But the real players are in the shadows. Simone's heart raced. The deeper they went, the more dangerous this became. She had known the risks from the start, but now they were more real than ever. Inside the police station, 12:00 p.m. Back at the station, the officers who had been involved in the altercation with Simone were feeling the pressure. Officer Davis had already begun cooperating, but Officer Briggs was a different story. He was a man who had spent his entire career hiding behind his badge, someone who thought he was untouchable. But with every passing hour, the walls were closing in on him. Briggs sat at a table in the back of the station, his head in his hand. His partner, Officer Davis, had been pulled in for questioning again, and Briggs was left alone to stew in his own fear. He had known the day would come when his actions would catch up to him, but he had never imagined it would happen like this. The city was in an uproar. Simone's incident had sparked a firestorm, and now he was the face of it. Suddenly, the door to the room opened, and Captain Richards stepped inside, his expression grim. "Briggs," Richards said, his voice cold. "We need to talk." Briggs looked up, his face pale. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "I know," Richards said, taking a seat across from him. "But it did. You've put this entire department in jeopardy. And now we have to figure out how to handle the fallout." Briggs ran a hand through his hair. "What do we do?" Richards leaned forward, his tone low and conspiratorial. "We're going to make a deal. Davis has already turned on us. He's talking to the FBI. If you don't cooperate, they'll bury us both." Briggs's eyes widened. We can't let them. You don't have a choice." Richards cut him off. "You think they won't go after you if you don't give them what they want? They already have evidence on the whole damn operation. But we can still fix this. We just need to make sure we're the ones in control." Briggs hesitated, his mind racing. What had he gotten himself into? Simone's apartment, 1:00 p.m. Simone sat at her kitchen table, staring at the stacks of papers spread out in front of her. Agent Anderson had given her the green light to start looking into Briggs and the others in the network. But she knew that doing so meant she was stepping into the lion's den. The political figures behind the corruption had been careful, meticulous. They knew how to cover their track, but Simone had been trained to follow the trail, no matter how deep it went. Her phone buzzed, snapping her back to reality. She glanced at the screen. "Agent Jefferson, I have something you need to see. Meet me at the old warehouse on the east side." It was from Agent Anderson. Simone didn't hesitate. She grabbed her jacket and headed out the door, determined to stay one step ahead. The warehouse on the east side of town was a known safe house for illicit operations. If they had something there, it could be the breakthrough they needed to shut down the entire network. East Side Warehouse, 2:00 p.m. The East Side Warehouse was an old, abandoned building tucked away behind rows of rusted steel fences and overgrown grass. Simone arrived, her eyes scanning the area for any sign of movement. It was quiet, too quiet. But she trusted Anderson. They'd been in worse situations before. As Simone approached the entrance, she spotted Agent Anderson standing near the door, speaking in hushed tones with a man in a black suit. Simone couldn't see his face, but the man's serious expression told her everything she needed to know. Anderson turned to Simone as she approached. "We found something. Something big." Simone stepped closer. "What is it?" Anderson motioned for her to follow. Inside the warehouse, the air was damp, the concrete floor cracked and dirty. In the center of the room, a table covered in documents and hard drives lay in the middle of a dusty floor. Anderson flipped open one of the folders and handed it to Simone. "This is the heart of the operation, Anderson. We've been tracking the money trail, and it leads straight to the mayor's office." Simone's stomach twisted. "The mayor? You're telling me that he's involved in this?" Anderson nodded. "The corruption runs deeper than we thought. The mayor has been using police officers like Briggs and Davis to intimidate the public and control the black community." Simone felt the weight of it all crashing down on her. She had known the system was broken, but this was something else. "This ends now," Simone said, her voice firm. "We exposed them all." The walls had already started to close in. Simone could feel the weight of every decision, every action she had taken in the last few days, hanging over her. She had uncovered the deep rot in Shreveport's police force. But the corruption reached far beyond just the officers. It went straight to the heart of local government. Mayor Richardson was not just an innocent bystander in this mess. He had orchestrated the entire operation, using officers like Briggs and Davis, as pawns to enforce his racist policies. Agent Anderson had secured the necessary evidence, hidden in the files Simone had found in the warehouse. The truth was there, clear as day. But as they prepared to expose it to the world, Simone knew that danger was coming. She wasn't naive enough to believe that this operation would end without consequences. The higher-ups had too much power, too many connections to let it fall apart so easily. But she couldn't back down now. The truth needed to come out, no matter what the cost. Inside the FBI office, 4:00 p.m., Simone stood in front of a large whiteboard in the FBI office, her mind racing. She had spent the last few hours piecing everything together, and it all led to one place. Mayor Richardson. It was clear now that he had been running the underground network with the help of corrupt officers. The prosecutor's office had already been notified, and the investigation was set to go public. But things were moving faster than Simone anticipated. The pressure was mounting. Every minute was crucial now. Agent Anderson entered the room, her face grim but determined. She was holding a folder, the final evidence that would bring the entire operation down. "We've got a problem," Anderson said, her voice low. "The mayor's already making moves, the media's been tipped off, and the police force is preparing to shut us down." Simone clenched her fist. "We can't let them win. This isn't just about taking down Briggs and the others. This is about dismantling everything, and we don't have time to waste." Anderson nodded. "You're right, we need to move now. The mayor's already putting pressure on the state. We don't have much time before this goes public." Simone's mind was racing. She couldn't allow the momentum of the case to slip away. The city needed justice, and that meant using every tool she had at her disposal. Simone and Agent Anderson, along with a small team of agents, arrived outside the mayor's office. The tall glass building loomed over them, a symbol of power and control. But this time, it wouldn't be enough to shield the corrupt system hidden within. As they walked toward the entrance, Simone's phone buzzed. It was a message from Davis, the officer who had agreed to turn on his fellow officers. He had become their inside source, feeding them information about the ongoing cover-up. "The mayor's office is on lockdown." The message read, "They're moving the evidence tonight. Be ready. I'll be waiting for your signal." Simone's heart pounded. They had to move quickly. "We're going in," she said firmly, "and we're not leaving without everything." The mayor's office was pristine, decorated with portraits of Shreveport's past leaders. It exuded an air of authority, as if to remind visitors who was in control. But it wasn't the decor that had Simone on edge. It was the empty feeling that came with knowing that decisions were made here, that directly impacted the lives of people like her. Simone and Anderson stepped through the ornate double doors, flanked by agents. A few security guards were stationed at the entrance, but they quickly stepped aside, recognizing the FBI agents. "Move fast," Simone whispered. They had to get to the mayor's private office and secure the documents before anyone could stop them. The building was eerily quiet as they moved down the hallway, passing by rows of closed doors. They stopped at the end of the hall, where a thick oak door marked the mayor's private office. Simone's breath caught for a moment, but she steadied herself. She had come too far to hesitate now. With a nod from Anderson, Simone took the lead, entering the office with a purpose. The room was filled with stacks of paperwork, files, and closed-circuit monitors. They were too late. A figure in a dark suit was already going through the papers. Mayor Richardson himself. His eyes flicked up when he saw them, but it wasn't fear that crossed his face. It was arrogance. He straightened up slowly, his demeanor unbothered. "You think you can just barge in here and take me down?" the mayor asked, his voice laced with mockery. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, Agent." Simone stepped forward, her voice cold and unwavering. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with. You're a criminal, and I'm here to make sure you pay for every life you've ruined." The mayor laughed, a cruel sound. "Do you think this little investigation will stop me? I have connections you'll never understand." Simone pulled out the file from Anderson. It was the evidence, the final blow to his operation. The names, the accounts, the secret meetings, all of it was in his hand. She threw the folder onto the desk. "You're done, Richardson," she said. The mayor's face flickered for a moment, his confident smirk faltering. This was it. The game was over. Simone moved to the desk, standing her ground as Anderson made the call to federal authority. But just as she picked up the phone to confirm their victory, a loud bang echoed through the hallway, followed by the sound of rushing footsteps. Something wasn't right.